Hi, welcome to the video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy, and comment your thoughts and opinions on the stories. Let's get started. Am I the antagonist for getting angry when my partner announced she's pregnant? My partner, 34F, and I, 28 male, have been together for 5 years. She has a daughter, 8, from a previous relationship. Right off the bat, it was made known I had fertility issues and likely wouldn't ever be able to father a child. I moved slow in the relationship, although I had fallen in love with her fast. When things got serious, I overheard her telling her sister she was concerned that I might be an aggressive type person because of the amount of scars I have. I didn't want her scared away, so I told her I had a bad childhood and left it at that. A little over 2 years into our relationship, I felt somewhat comfortable opening up, and for the first time I told her exactly why I'm infertile, which is a direct result of an injury I suffered due to trauma as a child. She was really empathetic, and I was just thankful I had found the one I want to spend my life with that also came with a kid I adore. Fast forward to last summer. My partner and her friend decided to play an impromptu prank on me. I came home from work. There were multiple positive pregnancy tests in the bathroom. My partner announced she was pregnant. I started freaking out, a happy freak out cause I thought I had hit the lottery with the slim to none chance I have. They both started laughing. The tests were from the friend and not my partner. I was pretty much devastated and felt really let down that my partner would actually pull a prank like that. At first she was shocked by my reaction and said, "I thought you'd know it was a joke considering your circumstances." She ended up apologizing after realizing how hurt I was. Now for the point of the post. 3 weeks ago she arranged a huge dinner with her entire family at our house. She had us play this stupid mystery game and ultimately announced to everyone she's pregnant. Her mother and sisters were deliriously happy. Immediately I got pissed thinking this was yet another prank. So I showed absolutely no emotions, which everyone caught on to. I said to my partner, "Either you're just mentally disturbed or you're cheating." That's pretty much when all hell broke loose. My partner's povis that she was sincerely apologetic about the prank, and I should know her well enough to not think she'd ever pull that stunt again. She's also livid at me for ruining the announcement, embarrassing her in front of her entire family, causing them to think I'm a horrible person, and then finally insinuating that she's a cheater. I still stand by my claim that had she never pranked me, my reaction would have been different. I do find it odd she decided to tell me along with her family. Things would have likely went over better had she told me first, and then we announced it together. But I'm starting to think I acted immaturely causing scene in front of her family, and I think that's maybe where I'm wrong. After the baby is born, I'd recommend getting a paternity test right away, and in the interim, I'd suggest giving your relationship with this woman some serious thought. If so, you two really need to go to couples therapy. If you don't win full custody, I'd advise leaving the situation. Comment by team member Jordan. Now for the top comments. NTA. She is the boy who cried wolf. How stupid of her. And she owed you a private conversation about all this, and then to announce it to others only when both of you are ready. I think I like what you said as the best way to address this with her, to help explain his perspective to her. It's not about still being mad about the prank, it's about the fact that you owed me a private conversation about this first. Just because you apologized doesn't make that it happened disappear, and you should have been aware / cognizant / considerate about the fact that it would immediately pop up in my mind and create doubts. NTA, that prank was just beyond cruel, and then to announce it with everyone and not tell you privately is insensitive and immature. Your reaction was to be expected. I see both these as red flags for your relationship. Congrats on the baby though. Although I'm sure you'll have doubts until paternity test happens. I'm sorry that you're with a really immature person who clearly doesn't know how to communicate in a relationship. The prank was cruel. Period. Not telling you when you were alone was also cruel, especially given the prank. Her reaction to your reaction seals it. She doesn't realize that what she did was hurtful and wrong. She's self-absorbed, and you deserve better. NTA. If it weren't for the kid on the way, I'd tell you to run away from her as fast as you can. And I know this won't be popular, but please get a paternity test before you sign the birth certificate, just to be safe. Am I the antagonist for firing a person for not reading a mail? Many years ago, I moved to a VHCOL city as upper management, non-US country. One of the business units I took over was a team that was well compensated even for the field and country. Their bonuses were directly influenced by their individual and team performance. At a rough estimate, the junior level made 9x for their demographic and between 2x to 5x for their field. This is relevant. Eventually I switched jobs, but with the same employer. Recently I've returned to wind down our remaining business operations in the country. The geopolitical situation in the region has been harsh on this city, and everyone with the means to do so has already left for good, not Ukraine. While the employer paid incredibly well, the field is very niche and my former team would be hard pressed to find employment elsewhere. I discussed with boss, owner of company, and made them this offer. Option A was, if they decided to relocate to a preferred country, 6 one-street world countries, we'd give them the same job and the same terms for pay. Option B, if they decided they wanted to relocate to one of a larger number of countries, we'd allow that. But we wouldn't be able to offer them the same job and terms, and we'd pay the market rate for whatever role we ended up putting them under. The goal was to get them out of their current country and give them a chance at setting up a life elsewhere. This was communicated clearly and in writing to every person on the team. Everyone chose option A except for one guy I'll call Jack. Where Jack wanted to go, the only roles available were all a huge step down and maybe only 20% of his previous pay. I emailed Jack explaining this and asked him to confirm. He confirmed that he understood. Okay then. The arrangements took a couple of months of juggling numbers, negotiating and consulting lawyers. I sent out the new employment contracts. Jack's response was quick, nasty, and he set every manager up his chain. Contents included insulting. Didn't value staff. Hypocrites. You get the idea. His managers responded before I even read the email. Jack's next message apologized, saying how he didn't have time to read emails and responded without reading everything and asked to switch to option A. Here's where I might be the R. When I checked my email and saw his original response, I withdrew his offer. The amount of time, effort and money that had gone into ensuring we could get them visas had already been quite costly. If he was insulted by our effort, then consider it withdrawn. Jack emailed begging, saying that he'd take option B. I informed him that he was on garden leave effective immediately, and once we completed the dissolution of the company, our relationship would come to an end, and wished him luck. Am I the antagonist? At least 2 emails describing the procedure which required relocating to a different country were sent to Jack. He didn't even read them, did he? I believe you should also be pleased that you eliminated a team member with low attention to detail, as long as you are not responsible for withdrawing the offer. Comment by team member Jordan. Now for the top comments. NTA. He burned his bridges. He could have been polite and classy, but chose a different route. This is on Jack. NTA. This concerned his future, and he couldn't even bother reading all of it before responding. That's on him. NTA. It involved him moving to a different country, and he still couldn't be bothered to do more than skim the email. If you can't trust someone to pay attention when something directly affects their entire life, you can't trust them to pay attention to things that affect the company. I'd be more worried about the quality of work he'd been doing than how he feels about not having a job anymore. I did consult with his managers before I fired off that email, and they assured me that Jack wouldn't be missed. Lol. From your description, it sounds like the country you're talking about is Hong Kong. It's a tough situation for Jack, but unfortunately for him, he learned the hard way that actions have consequences, and one of the things you never ever do is send off an email to management in a spur of anger, because you can never take that back, and burning bridges that could be future references is stupid AF. Wow, good for you for taking care of your people. That's amazing. Even if your tale had been I have an employee who doesn't read company emails, but sends inappropriate group emails, I'd say not the a-hole. I've taken corrective action with employees who have done this. Potential advice on the side: is he otherwise a valuable employee? Sounds like a stressful situation for everyone. Maybe he just had a moment of relapse of reason and would be alright once he moves. I try to save great employees, but don't have time for average or below average ones. Jack was one of the last hires made at the end of my tenure as the head of that boo. I considered him a bit of a wild card even then, but he was on probation and I deferred the decision to my successor, who ultimately kept him. Her input was that Jack was frustrating because he actually could do a job that less than 1 out of 1,000 people can do, but he did the minimum. He'd hit the KPIs and just coast. Mind you, we bonused directly on performance, so it's not like we weren't paying for that extra effort. His performance somewhat weighed down the team's performance and therefore their bonuses, which is why people weren't a fan of him. Am I the antagonist for spending my own money? My 36F boyfriend, 43 male, has been annoyed at me recently for spending money on shoes, purses, dresses, jewelry, etc. I work full-time and have a second part-time job for fun. He has 2 part-time jobs that add up to about 10-15 hours a week in total. I pay $3.40 each of all the bills plus all unexpected expenses, which doesn't bother me since I do make a lot more. He can barely cover his $1.40 each and sometimes skips paying because he doesn't have enough. Shit happens and I cover his share those times. I lost a metric fuck ton of weight and needed to buy a whole new wardrobe. With new clothes comes a need for accessories obviously. So I've been finding stuff I like and purchasing that too. I always make sure the bills are paid. The car has a full tank. The fridge is stocked. The birds and child are taken care of and some money goes into an emergency fund just in case. In my mind, the money that is left is mine to spend however I like. I work 45 hours a week in a highly specialized niche job that took a literal decade of studying to get the required knowledge. Meanwhile my so refuses jobs because it sounds boring or I don't want to be on the phone all day. But now he's been making me feel bad for buying shoes and purses because he doesn't have money to spend on frivolous things. There's nothing that needs attention right now. Last month the outside of the house needed new paint so obviously I didn't buy shoes, but paid the painters, and I feel like I should be allowed to spend my money on things I enjoy. We have kept our finances separate by the way, and even though it's a house the mortgage is in my name only. He wires his share to me every month and I use it for groceries and internet and Netflix and such. Am I the antagonist for buying clothes and shoes here? Why are you with your guy if he doesn't have money or doesn't want to work? You ought to be setting money aside for the future. Put money into retirement accounts that are invested in cautious investment portfolios and accumulate an emergency fund of 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses. Comment by team member Alex. Now for the top comments. NTA, you're dating an entitled leech. 43. Barely works. Doesn't contribute and has the audacity to criticize your spending? Stop subsidizing his lifestyle and ditch this dude. If he wants to buy stuff for himself he can get a job. When they said it doesn't bother them to cover almost everything I was so shocked. How exactly could you possibly be tar here? He's fucking 40 and only works part-time jobs and turns down full-time ones because they are boring. Even though you feel like the finances are separate, they aren't. You pay the lion's share of the bills. Food, gas, who knows what else. Why are you even with him? What is he bringing to the table here? NTA in this story. But you are tar to yourself. Toss this whole man out. He's leeching off you. I'm gonna be honest and say I think the real reason he has an issue with her spending money on clothes and accessories is because now that she's lost weight he's feeling insecure. He probably thought that she'd never leave him because she's overweight, but now that she's lost weight and looks hot he's at risk of losing his meal tickets so of course he doesn't want her buying clothes that actually fit. I wouldn't be surprised if he was probably trying to sabotage her efforts as well. Am I the antagonist for getting a classmate's dad deported? So I know the title sounds bad, but it's the only short way I could see to describe this situation. I had a South Asian classmate who was extremely racist towards black people. He was the son of an immigrant, and we had issues the moment he started at this school. He would go out of his way to harass me and call me racial slurs along with even trying to get me in trouble for cheating, because apparently it's impossible for a black person to get better scores and grades than him without cheating. For further background, my dad owns a company, which I won't be naming here for obvious reasons, and as it turns out, the kid's dad works at my dad's company. I didn't know this at the time though, and had told my dad about the kid. He asked me his name, and I told him, but didn't think anything of it, because I didn't know about his dad. Fast forward a couple weeks and this kid comes to school crying and screaming at me about how I got his dad deported, and I was extremely confused at the time. As it turns out, his daddy's just as bigoted as him and had a slew of complaints from other black employees at my dad's company, and after my dad heard about these complaints, he was fired. I, of course, don't know the details of their immigration or much about immigration law, but it seems to me he was here on some sort of work visa, and without my dad sponsoring his stay as his employer, he was sent back to his home country. I didn't know any of this would happen, or that his dad worked for mine, but I can't say I feel sorry for him. I just shrugged at him, told him tough luck, and walked away. Am I the antagonist? Your dad was informed about the racist classmate who was making fun of you. You simply told your father what was going on in your life. You did not work to have him deported. His actions led to his deportation. That is his fault, not yours. Only the son has himself to blame. Comment by team member Shannon. Now for the top comments. NTA, I was ready to call you Tar, but soon not Tar. You are a kid who was being bullied and discriminated. That kid being Asian does not give him the right to be racist towards you. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You told your dad the situation. You did not know what would happen, and even if you did, it would not be your fault. You do not have to tolerate people being abusive towards you, just because they could have grave consequences. Personally, I hate a system where, if you get fired as an immigrant, you are immediately deported. However, because we live in that system, maybe don't be a racist dickbag to everyone around you. Even if Op didn't say anything, I'm sure racist dad's time was short. I hate this too, but my stepdad hires these people. As long as they stay out of trouble, they get as much work as they want. He even does paydays early for any bills/fees. When one person got caught drunk driving, the employee asked my stepdad to say he was a good guy and it was an accident. Guy had done this before. From what my stepdad was told, it was the first time he was caught, so he didn't. He doesn't condone drunk driving. If they come in say hi/drunk to a job site, he will tell them to do home and come back tomorrow. If after that one chance they do it again, nope, fired. No questions asked. NTA, you didn't get him deported. That guy got himself deported when he pissed off everyone at the job that was sponsoring his visa. Am I the antagonist for making daughter pay for friend's brother's new TV? My husband and I, 45 male and 45F, have 4 kids, 15F, 13F, 12 male and 11 male. Our youngest daughter has a group of about 7-8 girls in her social circle. They often have sleepovers together. My daughter went to her friends, 13F, for a sleepover, and there was one other girl, 13F, there. The friend she was staying at has a twin brother, 13 male. After some renovations about 2 years ago, he moved to the basement of the house and made it his boy cave. He plays baseball and tennis, loves sports. His room basement is covered in all sorts of sports memorabilia. The boy also games and has all of the consoles and plays video games with his friends. The basement also has a kitchen, which he decided to have it renovated to be vintage. At the latest sleepover, his sister and the 2 other girls went downstairs. The boy was out of town for a friend's b-day. After the boys came home from the trip, the next night, I get a call from the girl's mother explaining that her son came back to a broken TV and stove. She asked if I could come over. The girls were asked to explain what happened. They started to tell their story, saying it was an accident and that the Wi-Fi remote crashed into the TV and they don't know what happened with the stove. There were inconsistencies in the story. We threatened to take phones away if they didn't tell the truth. So they told the truth. It was on purpose. The girls were mad at the boy because he refused to tutor his sister during the school year, telling her to just study. The girl ended up failing the year and had to go to summer school. This led her to missing out on stuff the girls wanted to do with her. So this was their revenge. They purposely broke the stove and purposely threw Wi-Fi remotes at the TV. After that, we discussed what we wanted to do. We wanted the girls to split the costs of getting a new TV and restoring the stove. As we were discussing this, my 12-year-old texted me a picture of one of the Snapchat stories my daughter had posted. The girls had also mocked him from buying some stuff, like an old big sports water jug, and the clothes he wore, vintage sports jerseys, since he got some of them at Goodwill, which was his choice. The parents can afford higher-end stores, so we decided to take the boy shopping at thrift stores for the day, while having the girls talk to the people who work in donations, explain why their services were needed to cover the costs of the TV and stove. We are making them do chores around the house of the boy, including his chores, and their own homes. They can also mow people's lawns and do other stuff like that to make money. My daughter called my mom and dad after this and explained to them how it would take her many months to work this off, and my parents called me and told me that I was out of line and should pay for the damages without making daughter do chores because she's just a kid. Am I the antagonist? The lad shouldn't be penalized for declining to tutor the girl because it is not his duty to do so. It's the absolute perfect time to teach accountability for results of her poor choices. The girls need to understand that actions have consequences because they purposefully damaged the TV and stove. Comment by team member Parker. Now for the top comments. NTA great parenting. Thanks. NTA in the slightest. Actions have consequences and you're a good parent for teaching your daughter as such. Thanks. We love her, and it's so disappointing to see her act like this. We don't want her doing this as an adult. NTA what you're doing is called being a good parent, and thanks goodness for that. Am I the antagonist for going off on my husband after he made a joke during his groom speech? Obligatory. On mobile. Sorry in advance for any grammatical errors. I'm prefacing this by saying that I, F30, always struggled with self-esteem. I'm an introvert, anxious, socially awkward type of person, which makes it worse. I got introduced to makeup during my late 20s and it's now become both a source of income and a source of self-confidence and esteem. My now husband always teased me about it. Mind you, he's a jokester and is a bit on the sarcastic, brutally honest side. I didn't have an issue as long as it was done privately, meaning private teasing. At our wedding I went a bit out of box when it came to makeup, but it looked matching and fitting obviously. My husband didn't stop commenting on it during the wedding. I was beginning to get annoyed, but when it was time for his groom speech, he looked at me and then said, "And my wife here who looks like a department store mannequin with that makeup on her face." I was dumbfounded. Guests started laughing at me loosely. I felt so much rage I didn't know how to contain it. I waited till his parents were around, then I went off on him about what he said. He said it was just a joke and I took it too personally. I argued with him about how I felt regarding his teasing in public, but he insisted I blew this out of proportion and ruined the atmosphere for the wedding as well as humiliated him in front of his parents. When I scolded him like he was a kid, he sulked about it for 3 days, then told me that I needed to apologize for this negative vibe I brought upon him and for reacting so insanely over a joke. I wonder if I really overreacted here. Am I the antagonist? Because he isn't sorry and will continue doing it, I would have that marriage declared null and void. When his attacks aren't humorous, he gaslights you into believing they are. It's a formula for disaster when you combine that with his complete lack of self-reflection following the fact. Comment by team member Cody. Now for the top comments. NTA. You expressed hurt and he turned the tables and said you need to apologize. He is not off to a good start when he cannot emphasize with how such comments are hurtful and embarrassing. You're pretty obvious not the a-hole. I would feel so awkward as a guest at this wedding. NTA. He has the emotional intelligence of a soggy cloth. Making fun of his new bride in front of all her friends and family is just peak stupidity, as well as just being cruel. Even if you didn't have self-esteem issues and anxiety, that would have been a dumb move. NTA. And brace yourself for a lifetime of this bullshit. It'll always be him kicking you and then getting all hurt when you yelp. It always amazes me when people see the red flags for years and still decide to get married. He's a bit on the sarcastic, brutally honest side. I rolled so hard I fractured my retina.